What is going on, everyone? This is Jim from RC After Dark. It is Monday, October 9th, and we are going into part 2 of the NQD jet boat with the brushless conversion. So we got everything out of the boat. Have our Traxxas Millennium VXL 3M sitting here in the box, still needs to go in. In the meantime, I went around the edges of all this stuff and cleaned up any kind of rough edges just to make sure that this sits flush when it gets remounted. Scraped out a little bit of the glue from inside here, from where somebody had epoxied all these little protecting fingers down or whatever. Pulled the cheese out, pulled off the excess amount of shoe goo that was in there. There's a ton of extra shoe goo in there. Also took this other flange here and cleaned up any kind of rough edges on this as well, just to make sure that it sits nice and flush. Used a X-Acto knife to clean up the edges. And then on the nozzle here, I'm putting in a little inlet for liquid cooling. And I basically went to my local auto parts store, got some hose connectors, various sizes. I used one of these right here because it's basically the same diameter as the brass tubing that I'm using around the motor. I cut it in half with the X-Acto knife. I didn't really cut it in half, but I cut that chunk off of it right there. And then I went into the end of it right down here, and I just cut a little crescent shape in the end. Not on this end though, on this end down here. Sorry about that. Let's see if I get the camera to focus in on it. On the other end down here, that way the hose still has the little nipples to grab onto to seal up. So on this other end that I cut off, I cut a little crescent shape in it to somewhat scoop the water and ram it up into the tube, which you have right here. So I need to twist that just a little bit to the left, but I was working on positioning, making sure that the hose is going to clear, and the rubber hose that I put on over top of this one to make sure that it was going to clear the nozzle and the this little servo horn up here. I also went into the back with the X-Acto knife, and it had some rough edges up here just from plastic molding. I cleaned all those edges off along the sides too, just to make it a little bit smoother. Same on the inside, in between that little triangle wedge, kind of went in there with an X-Acto knife and cleaned up any of that rough plastic casting that was in there. Now I took everything apart, scrapped out the controller, got some little pins out of the controller here, some springs, small screw, nut, bunch of screws here. So all that stuff, I'm just gonna keep it, the antenna from the controller. These are all parts that need to go back onto the boat. This is the old electronics box. I kept that on-off switch. I kept it, I don't know, might be able to use it for a set of lights or something. Kept the old motor. Kept the Tamiya connector and the antenna tube. And then all this crap here is all the leftover scrap. It's all little bits and pieces from the controller and the servo. Leftovers. Alright, so we are back. I have the little nozzle gluing over there in the corner. We're going to go ahead and remove these two screws down here for the motor on either side. These guys. And get this motor off of here. I already loosened up the set screw on the motor side. And just like that, motor is off. Just wanted to make a note, this little resistor thing here was sitting inside the motor. So that's not too healthy. We're going to save this little fiber plate here and leave it leave it here so when we put the brushless motor on there, nothing melts down to nothing. I think that's some kind of heat resistant plate, so if you don't leave that on there and you put your brushless motor up against here, it's liable to melt the screw holes out or something. So alright, next thing to do is unbox the Traxxas Valinian. Alright, next step, let's get this guy unboxed. Oh, those darn Traxxas battery connectors. I wasn't planning on that. I don't know if I have another Dean's connector laying around here or not. Oh, we're just kind of pulling out a whole mess of stuff here. We have our new motor. Ooh. Ain't she pretty? Some mounting screws. Our ESC. With the connector that I'm going to have to change out. Oh, some stickers. Of course, got to have some stickers. Product placement. Basic instructions. I'm sure everybody can knows what's going on with basic instructions and whatnot. So if you order one, you can flip through that yourself, I'd reckon. Alright, well, let's get started on winding up some cooling tubes or something. I don't know if I want to wind the tube before I get the motor attached. Not too sure just yet. And I imagine we'll probably put a couple of these here on the boat somewhere. At some point in time, probably after I paint it. Well, let's see what we gotta do for mounting here before I start winding up some copper. I don't know if you can tell or not, but the Traxxas shaft is just a wee bit fatter than that other little 380 shaft. Can't see the 380 shaft underneath that one, but you can see the Traxxas shaft underneath the 380 shaft. So we're gonna have to drill out this little coupler here that this slides into, just a pinch here to accommodate this. Well guys, I'm currently trying to build a water jacket for this motor, and contrary to popular belief, it's not as easy as one might think. Trying to bend this copper tubing around the motor here and keep it as tight as possible is not the easiest job in the world. Almost there. Alright, well there's one custom homemade water jacket out of copper tubing. Not much left of this piece of copper tubing. This was 3/16 by 51 inches. and there's about I don't know, 12 or 13 inches left. Alright, well, we are back, still wrenching away here. Excuse me. Still wrenching away here. Had to remove some plastic down here at the very edge, right here and right here, just so the bigger or the larger motor screws could fit in here without being sideways. Before they were kind of tilted in like this because they couldn't get a straight shot, so I had to clear out a little bit of plastic just to give these screws a straight shot through that hole. I also drilled a hole up here in the top because on this little fibrous piece here has 3 holes on it. The motor has 4 holes on it, so I figured I would drill an extra hole and hold it down with 3 screws instead of 2. Just because I was shaving some plastic away from these inner edges here. I also had to drill out the inside of this a little bit to make room for the new shaft, and that was definitely a little bit of a project. I had to hold onto the this connecting sleeve here with a pair of needle nose pliers and as best I can, and then just drilled really slow down in here. The faster I drilled, the more it was snagging, so I just had to drill super slow, just with the drill just barely turning. Turning about that fast. Super slow. And was able to drill down inside here with that. So now it's just a matter of mounting up the motor to this. And we are back. It is, wow, what time is it? It is 11:35 in the evening. I had to remove my little, whatchamacallit out of here, just because it's right next to a screw hole. And I'm going to need that little screw hole, so had to remove that little piece out of there, at least until I get this refastened. Got our motor attached. I had to drill this out a pinch. Had to loosen up this collar and slide it backwards a little bit because the motor, the pinion shaft wasn't quite long enough to make it. So I had to kind of split this up in between the two, which was kind of hard to do in keeping the impeller or the stator at the right distance out as well. So it was a little bit tricky trying to get the balance right in between everything and still have the stator in the right position. But it's on there. It barely worked. Barely went on there. So I guess it's time to get this guy back installed. Or reinstalled. Alright, well, we are back here. Filled the entire hull with foam. The motor is just resting in here right at the moment. It's not exactly mounted in just yet. Made a little cutout up in the front for the battery out of the foam. See some leftover foam bits right there where I traced out the bottom of the boat and inserted some big ass pieces there. Oops, excuse my French. Bunch of other little scrap pieces over there. So a little bit of custom foam work there. Alright, well, my next step is going to be gluing the motor in. So I'm going to have to use some shoe glue and apply it all the way around this little edge here. Going to pull this little wedge piece out of here. I don't know what exactly that's called. I've heard it being called the cheese, but I'm not too sure if that's what it's called or not. But we need to apply some shoe glue all the way around this edge and right across the back. These two pieces here actually sandwich between this top piece and this bottom piece. they actually sandwich in between the hull and the back of the boat, right along this seam. A little seam right there. The plastic on the boat gets wedged right in between that seam. So you need to lift this up before gluing this in, and then put a little bit more shoe glue around the edge of this and glue that into place. So we'll get to smearing on some shoe glue, I guess. And FYI, it is currently Tuesday, October 10th, and it is 10 a.m. 10 a.m. Sorry guys, I actually did fall asleep between last night and today, so camera was on pause, I ate some dinner and passed out, and we are back. Not since the last pause, but since daylight. Nevertheless, we'll get the glue in this guy on here. I've got some shoe goop right here, or shoe goo. That's what I'm going to be using. I need to find some kind of a stick or something to apply this with, so I don't mess up any tools here. Alright, well, I got the first part glued on, which is this little cap right here. And I put in a couple screws just to kind of hold that in check to make sure it was centered. And I've heard people talk about the shoe goo and how it sets up quick. It does set up extremely quick, so you need to, when you start applying this stuff, you need to really work kind of fast. Just FYI. I'm going to have to apply some around this edge here still, and along this back edge, and right along this seam right here, before we start slapping all this back together. So when I do this, I'm going to have to do it real fast here, so I'm probably not going to do that on camera. Just like this part up here. I did not do that on camera just because it the glue just sets up so quick. So, hold please. Alright, well, she's all goobed up here. I'm going to attempt to put this in. Say attempt. Yeah, you know what? Before I do that, I think I'm going to try to apply a little bit on the inside as well. Right down and along the bottom seam in here. Alright guys, it's not the best glue job in the world. Definitely not the best view in the world, eh? But she is in there. Still have to put the nozzle on the back of it here. That's the last little part to go on. I need to try to find some grease to grease up this end. And then we'll slap the nozzle back on there and start throwing in some radio gear. Alright, well, I haven't gotten to the radio gear yet. I need to put a little bit of the shoe goop around this outer edge here on the nozzle so I can attach the nozzle. Probably going to put some on a screwdriver and just kind of smear it around here. Don't really want to get too far into this inner circle on that nozzle. Right around in here, you really don't want to get into there. Which it probably is going to get in there a little bit. Try not to here. For the gluing process, a real good channel to check out is Youngster's Jet Boats. That guy put his own jet drive into a NQD tear into boat, and he does a real nice job gluing on camera. It's kind of where I got the idea for how to re-glue everything back in. There's definitely a lot of channels out there that have done jet boat builds and whatnot as well, so lots of little how-tos on exactly how to go about this. I probably have way too much in here. As we all know, I'm all about the overkill, which can be detrimental. Oops. Trying to scrape some of this away from this inner circle here. I think that's probably good enough. Good enough for my quality. When you're putting this back on, there's 2 longer screws and 2 shorter screws. The 2 longer screws go on top, the 2 shorter screws go on the bottom. Hoping I don't have too much on here. Not fitting on there too good. I'm thinking that I need to push that shaft farther in. It might be sticking out a little bit too far after doing the little motor swap there. So I'm going to go ahead and just put this on and sort of snug it up a little bit. Then I'm going to loosen up the shaft on the inside and finish tightening it down. Alright, so we got our nozzle all put back on here. I went back into the inside of the boat, which you're not going to be able to see, but maybe if you can. I don't know if I can get this on the angle that you can actually see it. Probably not. I went back into the inside and I put a gob of shoe glue around the screws that came through. So the 2 upper screws on the nozzle, sorry about that, where the 2 upper screws on the nozzle where they go through the plastic, I put a big gob of shoe glue on the back edge of them on top of the screws just to guarantee that they don't leak. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is glue that little nozzle back into the nozzle for the liquid cooling. So I need to get that glued in. Alright guys, we are back. I've got the nozzle gluing into the nozzle for my water cooling. And it's just leaning up against the wall, trying to keep it vertical so that glue doesn't go too far. So while that's drying up, I'm probably going to start soldering on a different connector here, since I don't use Traxxas connectors. I did steal a connector off of my WL Toys. This is off the old original WL Toy equipment. From the ESC going up towards the battery. When I scrapped out the stock ESC on the WL Toys before I put in my Spectrum, actually stock ESC receiver, before I put in my Spectrum receiver and Axial AE5 ESC, I cut the battery connector off the stock WL Toys. So this is it here. It's going out of there. Hopefully it's thick enough. And yeah, I guess that's the next step for this one. Alright, so we are back. I cut the Traxxas connector off the ESC. Got this Dean's connector prepped to solder up. Normally I would put black shrink wrap all the way down on these wires to hide the red wire in case the ESC, if I put it into another vehicle and the battery wires are exposed and you can see them, I'd rather have them blacked out than being able to see that it's actually, you know, powered by electricity. which it obviously is, but regardless. Since this ESC is probably going to be staying in this boat or going from boat to boat, I'm just going to leave it with the standard red and black shrink wrap on it, and because it's not going to be seen. There's a 380 motor hooked up to it. I'm probably not going to be putting a 380 motor into any driving vehicles on terra firma. So this is probably going to be a boat-only motor and ESC. So I'm just going to put red and black on it for that purpose only. Before I get soldering on this, you know, there was a couple of inspirations for using the Traxxas VXLM. The Crawler Ted's Garage, he uses it in his boat. RCCWR, or Scaletown, Chris Rapal, he uses one in his boat as well. And I just figured it was a good combo to run. I like the way it performs in the WL Toys with his big brother, the VXLR. So I figured the VXLM would be a good choice for it. Plus it's waterproof, so can't really go wrong there. All right, well, I'm going to put you guys on pause. I'm going to solder these wires because I'm burning up some serious time here. Hey, one other good place to check out for gluing and all that other good stuff for putting the motor in is Youngsters Jet Boats on YouTube. I'm in no way affiliated, but that guy makes his own jet drives. They're crazy big. There's a mile-long wait on trying to get one or trying to order one. But he does a real awesome job reinstalling the jet drive with applying all the glue and whatnot around the edge of the jet drive. It's really explanatory. He does a real good job at it. So if you're re-gluing your jet drive back in, that's you know, and you've never done it before, that is a good channel to reference for sure. And all right, we got the ESC all soldered back up here. New battery wires on them. Yeah, they are fairly lengthy, but wasn't too sure where I was going to be putting my battery and whatnot, so longer the better in this case. Normally you'd probably want shorter wires. ESC's got these little plastic tabs on it right here, and there was one right here, but I already cut this one off, so I need to cut this other one off too. That way I have a flat mounting location. And I was just basically using a X-Acto knife for this process. Cutting downward towards the table, that way I'm not cutting into anything like fingers. All right, so we'll find this thing's new location here. All right, so I'm going to be mounting the ESC right in yonder here on the original ESC/receiver location. That way my wires are nice and close to my motor wires. My battery wire is looping around the back here and coming back down. And then I'll probably put my receiver right next to it back here. And then of course my steering servo on the other side, and my 2-cell LiPo horizontally across the front. Alright guys, I got a little bit ahead of myself with the receiver and the ESC. I still have to finish hooking up these cooling lines. Wow, sorry for the bad focus here. Need to hook up this cooling line, and I think I'm going to run it up to this corner. I kind of want everything free flowing. So I'm going to use another one of these plastic connectors, same one that I used right down here. Probably drill a little hole right back here in the back half of the boat. Was thinking about going up here in the corner. That way it's kind of going downhill on the way to the motor. But I wasn't too sure. I was thinking maybe I should probably keep it down here below the water line. Or just above the water line as far as the crease on the boat. But nevertheless, I'm going to have to pop a hole in, and then I'm going to insert something into this and heat it up and bend it to the right and make a little bit of a right angle out of it. Not so much a right angle, but just a slight curve to it to try to match this grade, or try to match the angle coming off of the nozzle here. So that's the next step for right now, is to mount this guy in here. You know what, guys? We're back, and I haven't even progressed. I got this light kit laying around that has 4 red and 4 blue lights in it. I've had it for a while now. And I was thinking about installing a couple of these guys. That's what the bulb mounts into. Comes in from underneath. And you can just unscrew this, slide this part through the plastic, and then put the nut back on the back edge. So I was thinking about putting in a couple tail lights. And they're going to be sitting up on an angle, so I have to heat them up with a lighter and just kind of bend them gently so they're sitting straight again. So like a tail light on either side. And then on the front, right up in here, they're sitting on an angle too, so I'd have to heat them up and bend them straight. But maybe pop in 2 blue lights on the front and 2 red lights on the back. Not too sure. I do have a wireless winch controller and a 4-channel receiver, or a wired winch controller, so I can hook up the lights to the winch controller for a power switch. Never seen a Terran boat with lights on it. So I'm not too sure what I want to do with that just yet. But we're at 31 minutes here, so I'm going to end the video right here. Still need to mount all the electronics in here. Still need to hook up the tubing for the cooling system. And possibly pop in some lights. So this is the end of video 2. Thanks for watching, everyone. Click like and subscribe, share with your friends, and we will see you on the next video. Thanks again.